being one of the most skilled military leaders and tacticians, Napoleon kinda sucked. At a proud 5'6", he was in fact not a short king. He was more of an average height emperor, since Europe could only grow as tall on a diet of onions and potatoes back then. More in his appearance, he looked like this, and this. But most likely this. He wouldn't actually pose for portraits since he was too busy girlbossing. But this one was painted by a general he was well acquainted with, so he probably did look like this. But the big question, why was he always concealing his hand in his waistcoat? His hands were described as, I quote, the fattest and prettiest in the world. His knuckles dimple like those of a baby, his fingers taper and beautifully formed, and his nails perfect. So no, he wasn't horribly deformed. This is how you looked humble and sexy for your portraits back then. It's the 18th century equivalent to a peace sign for nobles. Another big question. Was he stinky? Probably. Well, not that much. During those times, purple baths were believed to be a health risk since hot water opened up the pores and that's how diseases entered the body. Filth is just another layer of protection. The wealthy, however, changed clothes quite frequently and also sponged. Napoleon was said to have had his peignoir soaked in cologne before wearing it. So he had that going for him. The first emperor of France was also a little bit dramatic. In 3 parts, these are my favorite Napoleon anecdotes that prove that. Part 1, Gaslight. While at the Chateau de Montmaison, he and his wife Josephine came across some swans at their property. Being a man of the late 18th century, Napoleon naturally wanted to shoot them. But Josephine begged him not to, saying they were with their young and she would feel bad. And you know what Napoleon said to that? Fine. It seems everything here is prolific except the madam. She was not able to provide him with child. And it was believed that men who could not have children were less masculine. This made him quite angry because he was 1, a narcissist, and 2, very needy emotionally, and believed the child would solve this problem. Part 2, Girl Boss. More in his relationship with Josephine, the empress would buy 900 dresses a year. Quite a large number compared to the 170 Marie Antoinette would buy, but around the same as a Shein whole TikTok account. And what Napoleon would do is deliberately ruin the dresses he didn't like on her by spilling food or ink on them. Some say he did this to support the French textile industry, but I believe he was just like, ew, that is so last century, Josephine, you are not wearing that. Or it was really just an accident. Constant writes, the emperor by no means ate in a cleanly manner. He preferred to use his fingers instead of a fork or even a spoon, dipping his bread in the sauce and the gravy. Part 3, Gatekeep. Napoleon famously said, ew, women's rights, severely restricting the right to divorce by mutual consent as well as the right of women to handle money unless they were registered traders. He was, yes, a military genius, but with the emotional maturity of a teenager and the patience and manners of a toddler. Sometimes doing very questionable things. Like, he would feed the gazelles in his estate snuff, because he found it funny since the gazelles were, I quote, not fond of it. And we're all aware of his self-insert romance story, but he's written other, more academic texts as well. And upon being given one of his old works to read, after a few pages in, he was like, this is shit, and threw it in the fireplace. That actually seems like a relatable 2012 Tumblr comic. Oh, he also got his ass beat? No, not at Waterloo, at a luncheon. After peace was established between Russia and France, Napoleon wished to celebrate by having a rabbit hunt. High-ranking military officials and the man who dominated nearly all of Europe stood before what was said to be 3,000 rabbits the chief of staff had gathered. And when those rabbits were released, they did not run. They went straight for the hunters, and they were so powerful Napoleon was forced to flee to his carriage. This was supposedly because these rabbits were actually domesticated and didn't fear humans like feral ones would. So we know Napoleon liked hunting, respecting women, and being kind of a dick. I would also like to bring your attention to this video that has all that and more, critiquing the most important piece of cinema made this year, featuring the most important person ever in the world, me. Please go and watch it. Okay, bye.